Hey everybody, Frank Fradella here with the Art of Creation show, where every week we come to you live, pre-recorded, to talk to you about the
we are not coming to you dead. I promise you, at least not yet.
None of our guests have been dead so far.
Not a single one that we know of that's really made themselves known. Although, I'm sure there are probably a lot of other, who knows, beings that are watching. But yeah, so far all of our guests have had bodies, so that's pretty cool.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, all of our guests.
Track record for me as a new guest. I want to know that statistics tell me I'm going to be alive after this.
Well, I don't know what'll happen.
Statistically, none of our guests have died, so that's.
But so far, none of the guests have died, and they've all shown up with bodies and left.
Awesome. Yesterday, actually, Anthony, we had the insurance salesman come to our house, the life insurance, and I'm 25, so this is the first time I'm ever looking at life insurance. And then Anthony's like taking out his second policy, and so I'm like, I remember when the life insurance salesman came to my parents' house, I was like, my mom explained, I was maybe 8, and she explained, like, if we die, and I, like, thought that the life insurance man was, like, an unsafe person because, like, he may kill my parents. So that's my reference to life insurance. And so knowing that people don't die when they come on your show is really comforting the day after my first life insurance meeting.
Yeah, I feel like it's really a good thing to advertise, actually. We should put it in our bio.
Right. 0 fatalities on the show.
0.
This is the Art of Creation show. I'm your host, Frank Fradella, alongside Rebecca Boswell. And our guest today is Julia Sotas, who, if you haven't met her, boy, you're in for a treat.
Sorry.
So, I know. Here it comes.
Oh, you too flatter me.
So the purpose of this show is to talk about creation and how that shows up in the world and how it shows up for our guests, and to kind of tease out the routines, the tips, the tricks, the tactics that they use to create more in the world. And so, Julia, you're doing something right now with energy polls, and you find that this is a subject that's very easy for you and difficult for other people. And I find that that's where most of us tend to take our talents for granted, right? The things that like are just come so easy for you, right? Can you talk a little bit about what this is and how it shows up in the world?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were talking before the show about, I've done classes on energy pulls before, and I'll explain exactly what that is in a minute. But I've done classes on energy pulls before, and they've always been like this smashing success. And I couldn't figure out why until actually we were just talking about it now. And I'm like, I guess that is really easy for me, and a lot of people do have trouble because we're taught we're taught to be a certain way in the world, and we're all naturally really, really different on whether we pull energy or push energy naturally. And you don't want to ever push, you want to pull, or, we'll talk about a couple different tactics and things like that. But basically what pulling energy is we all have energy. We are all made of energy. Every conversation, my husband is here behind me doing filing in the filing cabinet.
You can see him, by the way. You're not letting us in on anything we didn't know. We didn't know what he was doing, to be fair.
We're saying that he's filing, but I'm not sure. We'll just see.
We'll see what kind of rating we have to slap on the show after the fact.
In the next 5 minutes.
That's why we pre-record these things. Just
Did you see?
Oh yeah,
okay, great. So see
like a scuba snorkel thing, just kind of peek up from the
bottom.
Frank, I have this capacity to breathe out of my mouth and nose all at different times. I'm very talented. No snorkel required.
Cool.
The exceptional Anthony Mattis, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Anthony Mattis.
Energy transformer, both with his nose and with his mouth.
Actually, that has happened a few times.
I like this show. You guys are doing good things over here.
Well, creation is creation, and so you never know how it's going to show up, right?
Exactly. It can be anything. Oh dear. So yeah. So basically, that situation had an energy to it. It was fun, light, and happy. But each situation in our life has an energy to it. So let's say you look at your bank account. that brings up a certain energy. For most people, it's total abhorrence and fear. And for some lucky people, it brings joy and lightness. So everything has has an energy to it. When you meet a person, you have an awareness of them, you have an energy towards them. So what you can actually do is learn different techniques to change the energy of situations. And we're talking about the art of creation, and you can use that energy flow, that energy manipulation to actually make things come to life, to birth things into the world that are just fun for you, or are going to make you money, or going to be a new business, or anything like that, an artwork. And then I'll talk a little bit more about exactly how you do this.
Yeah, really, really cool. So what I hear you saying is we're all energy. And so when you can actually get a sense of what an energy is, that has to do with something that you're either asking for or something that maybe you've already created, then you can actually, once you identify that energy, you can actually work with that energy to either create more of it, or maybe even dissipate it or release it if you are looking to create something else, or don't even worry about releasing it or dissipating, but just actually pulling more of what you would like to take that space.
And the most damaging thing that we do in our lives is make ourselves unconscious of energy. It's like as soon as you become aware of it, you're usually way 10 steps ahead of the game. It's when you're not actually acknowledging that what energy is and that you can change energy. It's like things usually, then you're not actually actively consciously controlling it. You're just letting things, you have a destiny, or you think that life happens to you rather than being an active creator of your life.
Yeah, so kind of going more from the fatalistic perspective versus a creation perspective.
Right.
And I don't get that it's always fatalistic in that it's a negative connotation. It's there's some people who take great comfort in the fact that they're not in control, that there's a higher power that's kind of giving them, that's just kind of guiding them through their lives, instead of them having agency and autonomy and being able to choose.
Okay.
Right. And this is a matter of, I think that your point of view creates your reality, right? So I mean, if you think that you're not in control of your life, then well, great, you're not. Right. So I mean,
that's true.
Well, and I guess also, I mean, if this whole thing of fate or fatalistic, I mean, we tend to think of the word fatalistic as like maybe a negative connotation, but I guess it depends on whether you align and agree with what it is that you believe your fate is, or you have this sense that is not what you'd like to create, and yet you have no control over it. So this thing of like free will, of agency, like you said, of having the choice and the capacity to actually create in the direction of what's going to work for you and what you desire. So for not everybody watching the show has maybe worked with energy, or has a sense of energy, or even a sense of consciousness, and it can be such a big word or concept for people. But what would the value be of not being conscious, or not having awareness about capacities with energy that we all have? Yes.
What would the value be in not?
Yeah, and not acknowledging, right? So like you're saying, we all have this capacity, right? We all have this capacity with energy, but not everybody acknowledges it. So like what would the value be?
Like why wouldn't they acknowledge it, you mean?
Yeah, like what would the value of not acknowledging this capacity actually be for people?
I don't know, just pure. I personally don't really see any value, but like Frank says, that's my perspective. And I guess other people's perspective would just be that, I mean, a lot of people like to think that there's a higher force putting something down on them, just like Frank said. And I don't have that point of view at all. I am sure without a shadow of a doubt that what you make real is what becomes reality, and that's it.
So I've got to talk about something here. So I think it was the first time I met Julia, in Vancouver, right?
Right. Yep.
We were in Vancouver. I was there shooting something for Access Consciousness, and I got to meet the lovely Julia. I was a little palpitated over the whole thing. So pretty, so
It has
nice.
that effect on
people. All right, so we're shooting in her apartment. This beautiful, like ridiculous, like windows on every, for just like, oh my god, like you're up in the sky and there's like 2 full walls of window, and you're like, this is her apartment. She's 24 years old and she's been living here a while, and I'm like, independently wealthy, and she's like, no, I just chose it, right? So like when I saw the place, I had to have it. It was more than I was currently making, so I just chose that I would make more money. And I'm just like I want to get that face. That's going to be the still frame for the thumbnail for this video.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm just like if everybody in the world, like, that's what I want them to take away from this thing, right? So like she simply chose it, and like it just sounds like, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, but it does, right? So
right.
Julia, talk to me about this. Talk to me from that.
I never thought of it in that way ever, because I'm just like, well, I had to. Like, I threw myself, I hurled myself like over a catapult into this apartment that I could not afford, and I had to swim or I was going to sink. and so I just decided to swim. But it doesn't sound, that's not a part of people's realities to be able to achieve. Well, it is. It's a level of success in just creating what I was set out to do. But I often do that. Like, my poor father, because he just wants me to live a secure, happy life. And I can't do that. The only thing that keeps me going, that keeps me out of depression and keeps me off of medication, is my love of hurling myself into insane situations and figuring out how I'm going to do it.
There's this,
and that's sort of that beautiful thing, though, of like you're acknowledging like a lot of different possibilities that are available in your world, right? And you're saying like, I could show up and feel and do this, and I also could, hurl myself into this unknown space and choose and, go big and just choose it. And, when I asked that weird question about like, what's the value of not seeing and not being conscious, it's like, how, like, some of the things that you've chosen by 25, I would say for a lot of people that I even know would be like a disastrous, like, identity crisis to even consider some of the things you've chosen, right? And so
maybe we should tell them the other thing that I chose, that I hurled. Maybe we should tell the audience the other thing I chose and hurled myself into.
Yes, do it.
Which of the many, Julia? I'm gonna have to let you bring it up because I don't want to talk about something that isn't what you had in mind.
Okay. Well, no. 2 years ago now, I was like this with my hands on my hips. Like, I'm never getting married. I'm never having kids. I'm living in my fabulous apartment by myself and I don't need anyone. Because before that, I was like a slobbering romantic who wanted like family and all that stuff. And the Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, was like saw my obsession with like this picture perfect life, and he facilitated me to the place where I didn't need it anymore. Because when you lose your need of something totally, you can have it in like the greatest way possible. It can be better than even what you imagined. So I'm at this point, I'm a reformed romantic, love family kitchen person. And I'm sitting there with my hands on my hips going, I am just fine on my own, like proving it to myself, like I've got this. And I really did. I was really at the point where like, oh, I have this amazing home. I have amazing friends. I'm traveling all over the world. I'm making great money. I'm loving my life. I love my family, my parents and my sister. And then I went to an access class, and I met a guy, and I really, really, really liked him, and we ended up getting married. And his wife actually passed away 6 years ago, and he has 3 kids who are 16, 14, and 8. So that was I remember the night too that I was like where I like held my breath and like jumped into the deep end of the pool, so to speak. I had come to visit Anthony and his kids here for the first time. It was Anthony and I had been dating for maybe 3 months or something, and he said, "Do you want to come to South Carolina?" And I had my hands on my hips and I said, "No, thank you. I would not like to come to South Carolina because I don't want to meet your kids, and I can't become a stepmom. I'm not capable of that. That's not where I'm going." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "Oh, fine. Just let me ask if it's light or heavy." And so then I'm like, and it was like, I asked, oh, it was so light. It created such an expansive future. And so I'm like, begrudgingly I came. I was like, okay, fine, I'll come. And I came, and I just fell in love with his children. Like, they are the most incredible, wild, like not even people creatures to me. Like, I just absolutely love them. And so I came, and I remember sitting on the bed, maybe my 4th night here, and I looked at Aria, his daughter, who was 7 years old at the time, and I just had such love for her. Like, I was overwhelmed with how much I cared for this person, and I was like, all right, I'm doing it. And I just chose. And from that second, when the first weekend I met them, I knew I was going to be their mom for the rest of their lives. And I've never looked back since. And it has not always been easy, but it's like, you just choose these big things and then you figure it out later. Just like Richard Branson says, he's a mainstream kind of guy. And he says, you say yes, and then you figure out how to do it on the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because that's I think we talked too about my story coming to South Carolina. Maybe it's the energy of South Carolina, right? Because we were talking about that too. I was like, I don't want to go, and then I asked, and I'm like, it's light to go. Damn it! It doesn't fit with like what I've decided about it, and
exactly.
So it is interesting how it usually doesn't show up the way we think we're going to. And yet when you do follow that energy, you can create so much more in the space.
So much more
available from that, as opposed to going from that place of what you've decided or what you've judged about it, or, what you've projected about in the future, or look back to the past to kind of figure out what it's going to be.
Right.
So were you
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so were you using the energy pulls around that time, around relationship, or were you using the energy pulls for something else, and this actually had a similar energy and was how it kept pulled in, or what was going on with you around the time when all of this started showing up and you started to really create it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Frank, did you have something to say? I can answer the question.
So the thing that I think that we're all facilitators within Access Consciousness, and we have a different, I think, point of view about what's possible.
Yeah.
I get that not everybody who watches this show is in that place. Yeah. But the thing that I wanted to point out that we're, I think, taking for granted here is that everything that you're hearing Julia talk about, at no point does she have this point of view that it's not possible.
Right.
Yeah.
She's capable of creating anything that she desires because she has no point of view that it's not possible to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, at any
So
point
just
when
like,
we get to that, then it just stops. And if we're always looking at, okay, well, what else? Or what else? What else can I be aware of? Or what else, is here that I haven't
so
seen? Or what else can I
two
do?
questions that Julia continues to ask is, what would I like to create, and what would it take to create it?
Yeah.
And then it's like, right, like, well,
Yeah.
let's just do that then.
Yeah.
Right? Like, well, if that's what it's going to take, then let's just do that.
Exactly.
Right.
From that point of view, it seems absurdly simple, and yet so many people have not created what you've managed to create.
Yeah.
Right. It is absurdly simple, but I mean, it took me a while to get here, and I'll answer your question too, Rebecca, in a second. But it's like there were so many times when this was not my reality, and I think it does bring up a good point, Frank, to like talk about that a little bit, because one could look and say, oh, there's Julia on her fairy cloud floating over the mountains of Vancouver and now South Carolina, and it's like it's for that to actually be my point of view on what I live by. It took a while, and for me, one of the things that really has held me back and still holds me back is my need for perfection, like my real quite wicked judgment of myself, because I just got such positive reinforcement, and a lot of what we can't do or we won't choose or where we won't go comes from the positive or negative reinforcement of like that comes from our parents when we're little kids, and especially when the first few years of your life. Science says it, and energy says it too, of like it's like whatever you're encouraged for or discouraged for, it's like you want to keep getting that positive encouragement. And so I always got patted on the head so much for being perfect, and it wasn't even necessarily my parents. I had awesome parents. They were really cool, and they didn't really care what I did, but it's like when you are like the little star child, it's like you have to. There was also this place where I realized, in order to live like this and to trust myself that much, because that's what it is. It takes elephant balls, like, because everything in this world says that's not a good idea. That's not going to happen. You're probably going to crash and burn if you choose that.
Get it all perfect first and then choose.
Pardon?
Get it all perfect first and then choose.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And exactly. And I've really hurt myself, in the sense of like I wanted to, when I started being a stepmom, I wanted to be like the perfect parent. And those don't exist. I learned very humbly. Being the perfect parent has, I've had to learn to scream and to dominate and to control, and, which were things that not my idea of perfection. But yeah, it's just really like it's been a long road of like, I tried little things first, and then those things seem to work out, so I'm like, maybe I'll try this bigger thing over here. It wasn't like one day I'm like always had this self-confidence of like, I'm going to get this $3,000 a month apartment, and I'm going to be the stepmom of these kids that are almost as old as me. At the age of 23 I started. So it's like it happened over a time where I'm like, I would experiment with it, and I would trust myself more and more and more as I realized, fuck, I can do that thing, and I just did it. Okay, so now that thing, I bet I could do that thing. All right, here I go. I'm gonna
all right, so I got to stop you here because you're making it sound like this was an incremental change over time, right?
Kind of true. I mean, it wasn't. It depends how you look at it.
It's true to a point, though, right? Because the automobile is not an incremental change from the horse.
Right.
Right. At some point, somebody was like, well, how do I go faster than anybody's ever gone before with greater ease?
Good point.
To feed something. And it's like,
how can I do it from age 20 to 25 instead of from 0 to 90? Right. Like,
right.
Like, how do I do this, this apartment on the first floor with bars on the windows, $695 a month, and go to $3,000 a month? Like, and there's a point there
that did happen. Yeah.
Right. So there's a leap there. There's a quantum leap in like, okay, I've tried smaller acts of creation and they worked for me. The next incremental stage up, I'm just going to go big and see what I can create.
Right.
And you do that, and what I get here is that you do that with this sense of, no, I did those. I know I can do things.
Yeah.
So let me do this bigger thing. Let me just go big, and you find out what you're capable of in the act of doing it. And once you do that first leap, once you've gone from the horse to the automobile,
that's true, Frank.
Right, then it's all of a sudden
Never
like
go back down to being the horse because
and you can't pretend anymore.
You can't know what you know now.
Right. Yeah, you can no longer pretend that you're not a creator, that you're not magic.
Right.
You're like, no, like I'll fucking go to the moon now. Fuck, I'll create a fucking rocket now, right? Like, boom, you're on your way. And
that's true. Like
you hit that early.
Yeah.
And what I hear too, though, is like what I hear you talking about really is just this process of trusting you. And what I hear you talking about is how you started to really look at outcreating yourself. And really that's an internal process, right? When we're constantly trying to outcreate other people or compare ourselves to other people or, judge ourselves based on other people and then create that way, it creates in such a different way. And it has this like linearity. Whereas, if you're constantly out creating yourself, it has, it has a breadth, it has a depth, and it has a height, and it has, like different dimensions to it. And it's kind of organic and all over the place because you out creating you today,
right?
Creating a larger apartment, out creating yourself tomorrow may be having a deeper sense of kindness, out creating yourself.
Something here that's worth mentioning in that at no point did Julia separate her ability to create the relationship that she desired from creating a business they were in her world. Creation, right?
Well, I mean, is that true, Julia? So I mean, how does that
it's actually there was one defining morning of this. So Anthony and I started dating, and I moved into this apartment in Vancouver a month after we started dating. So those plans were already on the way before we started dating, like 2 weeks before we started dating. And I was $33,000 in credit card debt because I had decided that if I had a relationship, then I had to have financial detriment. And so I moved to Vancouver with $33,000 of credit card debt, never having had debt before in my life, which was like scary on top of scary town with like scary sauce on top. And
scary cherry.
Yeah.
Scary town, population me.
Yeah, like I'm like for the damage deposit on this place, which was like $1,400, I was like, I had asked my parents for money so many times. It was like it's no longer an option in my world to ask my parents for money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who am I going? Like, I was like, where am I gonna get? I couldn't put it on a credit card. I couldn't get it out of it. Like, it was nowhere to be found. $1,400 for the damage deposit. And I'm like, there's this lady that is a millionaire that I know. I'm going to call her and I'm going to beg. And that wasn't even the first month's rent. Like, this is the damage deposit. I mean, it's like, don't try this at home unless you really are going to like follow through. And so I never had to end up calling her. It showed up somewhere. I can't remember. I don't remember how it happened. But that money was in my bank account by the end of the day, and I put it down. So it was like, but it's just the willingness. It's like, if you're not willing to do whatever it takes to get it, you don't want it that bad.
Yeah.
And like it's an extreme way of living, but when you have an amazing life that is total living, and like living becomes an extreme sport. Like, I'm driving my kids to school in the morning sometimes, and I am so happy. and we listen to classical music, and the kids are yelling in the background and singing songs, and I'm like I'm so full of like life pumping through my veins that like driving kids to school is like an extreme sport. And so it's like when you choose,
I love that.
yeah, it's like when you choose things that are that out there, it's like living can become an extreme sport, and it's a totally different way of living your life. And it's like, it's not the 4-hour work week, it's not any of that, it's like something totally different. So
Well, it's finding play and actually creating that energy of play in your life, right? Where, I mean, even Stuart Brown, has the book on play, and one of the things is when we are able to play, when we're able to be really just in the energy of like creation and joy. That's
right.
how I see it. That everything is expanded. Everything, we talk about having greater possibility and infinite possibilities, and like really that's a place where the possibilities can exist, right? I mean, when you're doing that and you're just being, that's when you are so open to seeing whatever else can come in. And then if you can actually use that and harness that and then apply it to, okay, so this is what it's like to be enjoying myself. This is what it feels like to be, in this energy of play. And like, okay, and now I'd like to create a piece of art. I'd like to create a painting, or I'd like to write this book, or I'd like to create this apartment that completely stretches my comfort zone. So, okay, so how could I actually harness this energy, and what could I choose now to create this next thing with that? So I wonder, is that kind of our segue into the energy pulls? Because isn't that really what we're looking at, is identifying the energy that we'd like to have more of, and then pulling that from all the corners of the infinite universe?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so Julia, please take us through quickly for those who are not Access familiar.
Yeah. Like for anyone
energy pull,
do it.
pushing energy, pulling energy. Just give us a quick overview, please.
Okay. So close your eyes, guys. All right. And picture the space that's just outside of your skin. So like where the energy that lives where the little prickles of your hairs are on your arms.
Mm-hmm.
That's energy. Okay. So, and that's the space of you that's beyond your body. So now expand that. Close your eyes, Frank. Now expand that energy to the size of the room that you're in. And expand it up to the 4 top corners of the room and down to the 4 bottom corners of the room. All right. Now expand it out to the size of the house that you're in, the building, and over the city block, and out over the town, and out over the state or the province, and the country. And expand your energy into the ocean, and out into the universe. All right, now pull energy. This is what we're going to do next. So now take all the energy from the whole universe and pull it through the universe and through you. Pull it through the universe and through you. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to let little trickles of energy flow out to all the people who can help and assist you in creating what you would like to create. Now, trickle it out, trickle it out. And when you meet them, they'll already recognize you, feel familiar with you, and like you because they already recognize your energy signature. So say hi to thousands of people energetically. Now pull again. Pull through the whole universe and through you. And just keep pulling that energy like it's a big river of light. And you want to pull until you feel really vulnerable. And it feels like your heart's opening. And you're just totally receiving this energy. All right, you can open your eyes. That's one way of looking at pulling energy. And that's what we're going to be doing in the 30 days thing, that the club that I'm doing is like every day we're going to do that. It'll be longer and stuff, but we're going to do that for different areas of life so that you, and there's like, that's the most basic way, but it's like to pull energy so that you become more in tune with the earth, so that you become, you can create your business. If you're an artist, you can create art. If you have a book that you want to write, to create the people to show up in your life, to create the ease with writing it, to have the great ideas. So it's like there's all kinds of, it applies to any area of your life, to relationships with people, all of it. And pulling energy is one of the greatest ways of creating, from my point of view. It's fantastic. And it works.
And it's so easy. I mean, it's just a matter of choosing to do it and taking, I mean, how many minutes did that actually take? And everybody watching the show right now, if we kind of caught you off guard of like, wait, now everybody's got their eyes closed, I invite you to skip it back and to really do the exercise if you haven't done it just now with us, and do it, and just notice the space and just how everything seems after, right? How much more expanded can you perceive everything being, especially if things are feeling really contracted, if you feel like there's no way out, you feel like kind of all the walls are closing in from stress, from obligations, from deadlines, from, incessant thinking, whatever. Doing this can create so much more space where before it was just cluttered. So please use that. And I think it's great, Julia, that you're going to be doing this club and this program and really help people see or assist them in seeing that this is something that they can do, and actually build that muscle of becoming present, not just present in your being, in your body, also present on a greater scale, and recognizing that, regardless of what your beliefs are, your background, that, if there's ever a sense of not belonging, or ever a sense of disconnect, or ever a sense of being alone, that actually that is all a construct. That's
Right.
only a possibility in our mental imaginings. And actually, when we can connect to it all, that there's so much more available.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
here's the cool thing about what you said about, like, when you kind of let this trickle out to the people who can help you create the thing you're trying to create. And when you meet them, they'll already know you, or they'll already feel familiar with you.
Yeah.
Like you've kind of started to create this bridge. Now, if you're not in this world already, and if you don't do this kind of thing regularly or at all, right, this seems kind of like woo-woo-ish and hocus pocus-ish, and like, listen, I didn't go to Hogwarts, and I don't like you. You're making me nervous right now, right?
Yeah.
So here's the funny part. When you do this on a small scale, right, when you just pull through one person, right, like this, when you watch it work, when you see it actually work, there's this feeling of going out into the world and knowing that the universe has your back, right? Like, I'm going to go do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to create what I'm going to create with the I hate to use the word faith here, but with the knowing that the right person will show up when I need them to.
Right.
Right? Like, I don't have to have all of my ducks in a row first. The ducks will appear and get in line.
Right.
When I need them to.
And what if there isn't one person? Like, what if actually it's just a matter of recognizing that the information that we're looking for is all around us, and just being attuned to receiving that in whatever form it shows up. I mean, you could walk into a room and there could be 50 people in there, all of which who would have a piece of information that would contribute to you. And, and yet it's like, okay, and what are you able to receive in that moment? And now you can actually recognize,
Right.
you know, the things in the room that you can actually receive and go and connect with them.
Sure.
Right.
So we talk about receiving, right? So how many of our problems are self-created because we're unwilling to receive, right? And part of that, right? Like when I worked in marketing and advertising for 20 something years, and I saw most advertising works on this push energy,
Yeah.
right? Sale ends soon, act now. Like it's like I'm trying to scare the shit out of you into buying my thing today.
Yeah.
Because if I let you off this car lot, you're going to buy that car someplace else.
Exactly.
I got to get you right now. And that
Right.
push energy that like, you gotta, like, it's like, dude.
Yeah.
Right? Like that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, I mean, this
And-
whole energy becomes an invitation instead of like, you know.
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
my head.
Like, let me give you a good example. It's like, if somebody is a performer, you're and for those of you listening, it's like when you watch a comedian on stage or on Netflix, look at them and go, okay, so what are they doing? Are they pushing or are they pulling? And a comedian that takes a like if you take a long pause, if you pull, like, it's a different energy, and people are on their edge of their seats watching you because you're literally pulling them in. Like it can become physical in that kind of situation. And it's like a really, really great performer who sustains a phenomenal career is an energy puller. And people who push don't make it. They're short-lived. You can't, and there are a lot of them. I'm seeing some really crappy comedians on Netflix right now. There's some particularly bad comedians on Netflix, and they're pushing energy, and they're not with the flow and the beat of the audience. They come on stage and they're like, this is what I'm going to say to these people. This is how I have these lines memorized, and I'm a little bit nervous and not fully here and present, and I'm a little, and then it's like, they're not ebbing and flowing. It's like riding a horse. You have to move your hips with the horse. It's like having sex. You got to move your hips with your lover. And that's what a good comedy show has, is it rolls with the beats and the rhythm and the tempo of things, rather than this like predetermined, I'm going to say this to you now and you're going to laugh.
Yeah, and I'm going to wait for you, and then I'm going to say this other thing, and I'm not going to, So that's
so funny. The first thing that popped in my world when you said that, when you're talking about comedians, I think one of the greatest comedy concerts I ever saw back in the 80s, I think, Eddie Murphy's Delirious. If you want to see somebody who was just there to play, who was willing to show up and have fun and be and like, he had a routine, he knew what he was going to do. But like he was, oh my God, he was so present and connected, and just, it's one of the greatest performances in comedy, maybe ever. Right? Like Richard Pryor live at the Sunset Strip is another one. Like there were some guys who were like so good and so connected and so willing to be that.
Right.
And not have this point of view about like, okay, there's a laugh coming here, I've got to wait. Right? Like, you know, there's not a laugh there until there's a laugh there.
Exactly. And that's the way that you have to live your life. It's like you can't predetermine everything. You have to be like actively there and not think that anything's going to happen in the future or assume or decide. And that's the antithesis of what we're taught about money and finances.
Right.
Here. It's like you have to save for a rainy day. You have to be prepared for the worst. You know, I was joking about, you know, doing life insurance yesterday and stuff. And it's like, you know, things are not, it's not like that. It's like you have to go with the beat of life. That doesn't mean that you don't save, but what we say in Access is save 10% of the gross of everything you make in your entire lifetime and leave it there. But if you save and you save for a rainy day, then you have to keep creating a rainy day and creating all these problems to spend your money on.
Right.
Yeah.
And so with money, you have to be in the beat and the ebb and the flow. And when you're pulling energy, going back to comedy or performing, what happens is it's like the way that I describe it is it creates champagne bubbles in the other person's universe.
Yeah.
It's like when somebody is really pulling, oh, there's my beautiful husband again.
Hello, beautiful husband.
Pulling all the energy.
Cue on champagne bubbles. It's like, did someone call me?
Exactly. And but it's like when you're pulling really strongly, it creates this thing in people's world where they become more of them. They feel he just
oh, here comes this is the intermission where we get this. Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep that.
Maybe we'll see a leg, like, maybe we'll see a leg out here. We can always hope.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's like you're creating a sense that there's more in the world when you pull energy through somebody, and you are giving them a sense, like you said, Rebecca, that they aren't alone in the world, and that even though humans are too stupid to contribute because they're having their thoughts in their head, nature wants to contribute to you. The world does. The universe does. God does, if that's your point of view. It's like it's all there for you, and pulling through someone is one of the kindest things you can do for them.
So let me step in here. I had an experience yesterday that I don't want to talk about, because one of the things that I've made a personal mission for myself as a kind of thing to create more in my life is I'm starting to do life more, instead of just sit here and watch life happen or read about life or engage with people in a purely electronic medium. I'm going out and doing life.
Right.
So yesterday I went out and I got on a 22-foot sailboat and I learned how to sail. And I took the helm, and we were going 4.5 knots, and at one point the boat's listing at nearly 30 degrees, and where the experience of that and the necessity to be present with the wave, with the other boats, with the wind, the direction of the wind. If I had to trim the sails, if I had what I had to do with the rudder, with the keel, I'm all of a sudden it's there was no space for anything but me and the ocean and the wind and life.
Right.
And I came away from that, and that was like a good bar session for me. It literally just defragged me. It was so generative to go out and do life, and to this is something I want to talk about a lot with especially in terms of male friendships. This is something that we don't do a lot anymore. We don't go do life together. And a lot of deeper friendships are forged by common experiences. And so if your best friends are all people that you only know online, that's something that you might want to look at and, start to create experiences that you guys can share together. So that's what I did. I went out with a buddy yesterday, and we sailed together, and it was amazing. And I highly recommend, doing life more to get this sense of what it's like to be present.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it.
When you're sailing a boat, it's not like you can have your sailing plan and be like, okay, so when I get there, first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that. Then it's like none of that. It's like when I went into labor with my birth plan, right? I get now how funny that is, right? I have my birth plan. This is what the birth of my daughter is going to look like. I'm going to have my ball, and then I will do some yogic breathing, and then I'll take a stroll.
4 hours later, give me the fucking epidural.
That's a whole nother story. I got in there, and the first thing they did was, I'm sorry, but we have to strap this thing on you because whatever. So 1 through 5 on the birth plan just got struck off of it. But it's you can't go into sailing with the sailing of every little thing. It's great to have the tools of sailing. I know that if the wind is doing this, then these other things can be useful to keep me from capsizing. But you're the wind is doing something. Suddenly the boom is coming across. And so, it's not written to duck, right? But you're going to duck when the boom is coming across. Otherwise you're going to end up outside the boat. Right. So, it's that thing of all these places where we can actually choose to be living and being in the moment and having that, being in the flow and the energy of what's going on. And again, how much information can we then have as well about ooh, I really enjoy the way my body responds to the wind going across the hairs on my arm, and the way it feels when I'm breathing and the salt air is filling my lungs, or I love the sound when the, when the jib is flapping as I'm pulling it from one side to the other, or whatever, right? Like these are things where you start to learn things about yourself that you maybe never even knew, and about this greater world that we live in, and more of the possibilities, so that when we are doing these energy pulls, not only can we pull out to people who can assist us, we can also pull out to all of those things that we might not even have words for, but now we have this energetic marker of like, ooh, I'd like to have more of whatever that was, and pull more of that to have more of the living and the being.
Yeah, and there was so much involved in that experience where like every choice that we made gave me a new awareness, because like I've been on boats before. I'd never been sailing.
Yeah.
And it was something that I wanted to learn to do. And my choice to do that created something in my life. And every choice on the boat, every turn of the rudder, every trimming of the sail gave me something different. And when we ran, what my skipper called running hot, right? So we're running directly with the wind. The wildest thing about this was that like none of my preconceptions about sailing matched this experience in that moment, because the boat is moving exactly with the wind. So you don't feel any wind. It feels like you're sitting still, and it gets incredibly hot because the sun is just beating down on you, and you're no longer running in some kind of perpendicular line or opposition to the wind where there's wind washing over you. Now you're just in this channel of wind.
You're
and
in the train.
Oh my God. It was like, we were like, all right, we got to turn the boat. We just got to turn the boat. Like I'm getting so sunburned here. I mean, look at that. I don't know if you can see that sunburn that I got, but like crazy hot. So yeah, the awarenesses that we got from choices that we made was incredible. And Julia, I imagine that you, like a lot of what you created was a result of that, right?
Exactly. And somebody asked me to speak on a telesummit, and they're like, what would you like to talk about? What would you like to title it? And I titled it really, really, italicized the second really, living.
Yeah, right. And how much do we decide like what our life is going to be, or what our life is, and then do all these things to make that work and to fit into that, when actually the living is the messy moment to moment choosing of like, ooh, now what? Ooh, now what? And sometimes like, and like not to say that there aren't things, sometimes you fall in a hole, sometimes you step in a pile of shit, sometimes people are mean, like things show up in life. So it's not, I'm not coming from this place of it's all sunshine and roses, and yet at the same time, what's the value of getting somewhere and then going down the spiral of possibilities that can create less and less and less, when it is exactly the same amount of energy and will create more when we look at the what if and the possibilities that are going to create greater and more expansive and even more possibilities that can come, right? And that is a choice. Like at any given point, like when something is showing up and it's wonky or it's heavy, or you just feel bad, right? It's like, okay, so I can either say this is how it is, period, and marinate, or you can ask a question, right? And you can, like, using even this simple tool, expand out and get a sense of like, okay, wait a minute, like that is such a small little problem that I'm fixating on, or, the weight of the world that I thought was so big, when my shoulders are infinite, suddenly that little thing that was weighing on these little shoulders is just a little speck. And okay, you know what? I can handle that. I can actually choose something else. And I can call a friend. I can go and move. I can, create something that gives me joy. I can drive in the car and turn the music up or whatever. And it's like, there is always another choice, as long as we're willing to be open to it and ask the question, what else is possible here? What else could I choose? What could I create?
Speaking of questions, we're about at the end of the show, but we have a lightning round of 5 questions that we're going to ask you, Julia.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, we ask all of our guests the same 5 questions, so I'm always eager to hear what your response will be. So, number 1, what tool can I add to my life today to stop making excuses and start creating more?
What you want to do is ask, who or what am I resisting that if I didn't resist it would allow total creation in my life and living?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and how much is like the total greatness that we're asking for? How much is that actually right on the other side of the one thing that we're refusing, or the one person that we won't receive? So awesome. Okay, sorry.
Number 2, who inspires you to create more?
That's a great question.
That's why they're on the show.
Yeah. I would say Gary's stepdaughter, Shannon O'Hara, would be a good example of who inspires me to create more. She's created financially, she inspires me a lot. There's just so much that she's created. So yeah, Shannon O'Hara.
Cool. So have you ever heard of something called imposter syndrome? Okay, so quickly, imposter syndrome is this thing where you feel like you're a fraud, and then at any moment people are going to kick in your door and drag you out into the street and expose you for the fraud that you are.
My sister has that.
Okay, so have you ever suffered from imposter syndrome, and if so, how do you combat it?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Wow, geez, that's a random question. Have I ever? Well, what I would do is, oh my gosh, if you have imposter syndrome, don't try to do today what I've explained. You know what? I would get my bars ran.
Yeah,
that's what I would do.
I love it.
All right, so do you have a favorite book, blog, TED Talk, or anything that you often recommend to others?
Yeah, actually, something that's amazing is Gary Douglas's meditation walk YouTube video. It's very powerful. If you just go into YouTube and type in meditation walk Gary Douglas, you'll learn about how you can become totally connected to nature, and it's changed my life.
Cool,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
That one.
And 5th and final question, how will you out-create yourself in the next 12 months?
Yeah.
On deck, man.
Oh man, how will I
Easily.
not?
With ease.
That's a better question. No, I'm just kidding.
I would have taken that answer. That was great.
Okay, done. How will I not, Frank and Rebecca? In every way. I would like to see people stepping up. Not being I will say my political view. Donald Trump is bringing people around the world to be very much on their toes and on their feet and present in their life, because they don't know what's going to happen or what crazy move he's going to make next. So I'm grateful for him in that regard. Everybody's getting really present. I don't like any of his policies, but everybody's getting really present. So I would actually like to create a world this year where people are more present and living more.
Yeah, that's actually something that's been going on a lot here too, in this part of South Carolina. So yeah, I wonder what we can create, and I wonder if we'll be announcing something at some point that people can join us in as we explore more of that being present. Julia, you and I. So Julia, can you tell us real quick where people can find your 30-day polling class, and where can they find it? How can they register? How can they learn more about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to register for the Energy Pool class, it's juliasotas.com/poll, PULL. So my last name, well, you can see it on Facebook, but JULIASOTAS.com/poll.
Okay.
Awesome.
And I'm sure we can put that link into the
description.
Yeah, down there, so that anybody watching can check that out. And of course, in the meantime, it is starting soon. In the meantime, you can replay.
We start Monday, and it's Thursday.
Did today, yeah. So great, that's awesome.
It's been Friday at noon, so people, you still have time if you're watching the show when it airs.
And you have 3 days.
It's been such a pleasure to play with you today and to talk with you today and hear about some of your different creations. And I know we could have a 5-hour show because there are actually so many different fun creations that we could talk about and share and play with. And even like your mom, this massively talented costume designer. And, so I guess we'll have to have you back at some point and
Awesome.
do a follow-up. So really grateful to have you here with us today, and what better place right here, right now with you. So thank you so much. And I wonder what we'll create next. And I'll see you in Rome in a couple weeks.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me on the show. This is a rockin' show. I'm so glad that you guys are doing it.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thanks for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. And we're here every week, Fridays at noon Eastern Standard Time. New show goes up. If you've got any questions, any guest requests, any comments, leave them in the section below. We'll always do our best to answer them and get them to the people that you're talking to if it's a prior guest. And make sure you check out the show notes for Julia's class. For I've got a foundation coming up this month. Please, you guys keep rocking and go do life. Thank you.
Let's go do life.
Go do life. Go have some fun and do it right now.
Do it now.
Bye,
come on, get to the chopper.
Oh, awesome. Thank you guys. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.